Well, Good Friday certainly served up a few surprises in the EFL Championship, and now we get to look ahead to Matchday 40 as the Easter Monday edition takes charge. As always, we'll be previewing and predicting all 12 games, and I'll be encouraging you to do exactly the same in the comments below. Get your score predictions in for all the games, and if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be on Wednesday, looking ahead to the weekend's action. For now, though, let's have a quick look back at what happened in Matchday 39. And I have learnt the value of the perfect score because after a few poor weeks at times, I've benefited this time around. Perfect scores galore for me, 3 in total. And that meant that despite a pretty poor weekend of predictions overall, I managed to get a very decent score. 11 points in total, with a perfect score for the 1-1 draw between Millwall and West Brom, for Coventry's 3-1 win, and for Preston's 3-0 win. Correct outcomes also for Norwich and Ipswich, and a second away from a perfect score at QPR Birmingham. What a goal by Jimmy Dunn. That gives me 11 points, which does put me joint top of the Good Friday predictions in the comments. A lot of you got good scores this week, but the only person joining me on 11 was Swifty, who picked up 2 perfect scores and a number of other correct outcomes as well. So well done to you, joint top with me on 11. But let's see how many of you can beat me this week, because I very rarely have 2 great match days in a row. As we move on to match day 40, is a big set of games at the top, bottom and in a playoff race in a championship table. And we begin on Monday lunchtime with Leicester City versus Norwich City. Leicester struggled in the early kickoff on Friday against Bristol City. Awful first half performance, very much outplayed and lucky to be level. Second half, Jamie Vardy had a couple of great chances, both of them spurned and well saved. One of them was an absolute gift as well, should have put it away. But a moment of magic from Bristol City saw Leicester fall to defeat, which in the end didn't cost them too badly given what happened the rest of the day. But for now, a bit of a concern for them. We mentioned it on the last episode. With the hanging charges over their head, I think they thought they'd be up. And they've taken this approach with the EFL and the Premier League against charges. If they stay in the same division next year with the losses they're going to make, it's going to become problematic off the pitch. So Leicester really need to get the job done. But they're coming up against one of the informed teams in the division. Norwich, since they've had Josh Sargent back, since they've had a settled back 4 back, have been absolutely brilliant. 4 wins in 5 now, 3 clean sheets, and a turnaround against Plymouth as well. Didn't look great early doors, and once Plymouth got the lead, they sat back. Norwich dominated the ball, lots of chances, but didn't really create anything clear-cut. And in fairness, Plymouth had a couple of chances of their own at the other end. Maybe could have gone on and got another. But Norwich got the job done, and at this stage of the season, it's not about winning well, it's about getting the job done. No matter how, whether it's ugly, whether it's by 1 goal or 5, Norwich City needed the win. They go 4 points clear in a playoff race, albeit having played a game more than the 3 below. But a really crucial win, and makes this one quite hard to predict because Leicester have now lost 4 in 6 in the league. They lost in the FA Cup as well, and they haven't looked great for a while. This is more what I remember from Maresca at Parma a couple of years ago. I'm going to go for a draw here. I feel I have to play safe, and I know that neither side have drawn a lot of games recently. But I wanted to go for a Norwich win. I feel like Leicester will be aggressive. Let's be honest, this game is impossible to predict, but I'm going to sit on the fence with the Championship's favourite scoreline and hope that 1-1 delivers for me in an early kickoff again. As we move on to the 3 PM kickoff, starting with a big game in the playoff race and the relegation battle. It is Birmingham City versus Preston North End. Preston did the job we expected against Rotherham. Correct score for me with a 3-0 win, and again, game over at half-time. You have to say fair play. You can only beat what's in front of you, and they beat a poor Rotherham side very comfortably and preserved a bit of energy second half, which, to be fair, I don't think they can be blamed for. For Birmingham, I mean, when your luck's out, I don't know what to say. 3-1-0 defeats in a row. Looked like they were gritting their way to a point, and yet another late goal for heartbreak. But this time, I mean, we talked about the naivety of a set piece against Millwall. We talked about the fact that they were poor defensively at times to concede other goals. But against QPR, one of the best goals you'll ever see from a centre-half on his weak foot. It was just one of those days, wasn't it? And it means that Birmingham, now level on points with the 2 teams below, could be second bottom if all goes wrong this week. And they've got to find a way to score goals, which Gary Rowett, despite getting 1 in the week, it didn't look like a constant threat from open play. Didn't have many shots on target, didn't have many great openings. And that's going to be a big concern for them over this period. It's very hard to predict them to win games. You can see this being low scoring. Preston don't concede many, 4 clean sheets in 5 for them. And I'm going to do what I did for Preston's last away game. And what's happened to Birmingham so many times recently. We're going to go for an ugly 1-0 away win for Preston. We'll win at Birmingham City by 1-0. As we move on to a game that potentially a week or two ago would have been big in a playoff race, it's Coventry City versus Cardiff City. Coventry very much still in a battle, but Cardiff probably just too far away now after ending Sunderland's poor run by losing 2-0 at home to them. Wasn't just the result, it was a poor performance and a very slow start. In the end, Sunderland might have won it by more. It was a very disappointing day for them. But ultimately, Cardiff have had a better season than most expected. But it doesn't change the fact that they had a little opportunity, and that performance was not a good one. For Coventry, yet another win, another correct score for me, and Ellis Sims and Haji Wright. It's taken a while, but they've found a way to get both into the team and get both in form, and they both look a threat at times as well, which is great. You're seeing Casey Palmer in form, you're seeing players off the bench who can make a massive difference. O'Hare, Godden's now got an impact as well. Tavares at times has done the same. Coventry look like a side that are in the battle, and with them, Norwich and maybe West Brom battling it out, it could be very interesting come the end of the year. I think on paper, this one's quite comfortable to call. Coventry, while they have conceded goals recently, they don't let in too many at home. And yes, their last 2 home games have been Rotherham and Maidstone, not the most difficult ones on paper. You would expect them to find a way to win against Cardiff, who have drawn 2 blanks in a row, don't score many goals themselves at the best of times. I'm going to go for Coventry to win. I did have 2-1 initially. I'm going to go by 2-0 and to keep a clean sheet. As we move on to Middlesbrough versus Sheffield Wednesday, it feels like maybe last chance saloon for Borough. They've probably got to win every game now to have any chance at the playoffs. A great late equaliser against Southampton to make sure they got themselves a point. Latilaf getting amongst the goals again, but it's just not a consistent enough goal threat. To be fair though, they defended well, they were resolute, they soaked up pressure, and they let Southampton have a lot of the ball, which we've seen the pattern of this season. And at times, Southampton have struggled with that. Middlesbrough very happy to get the point in the end. For Sheffield Wednesday, probably a little bit more frustrated with their point at home to Swansea. Conceded from 1-0 up. Second half, they had a lot of possession against them. They were hitting strongly on the counter. They did have a couple of good chances and maybe could have nicked the game. But you've got to give credit to Danny Roll, because when he came in, they looked so dead and buried. It was unbelievable. I thought they were going to finish bottom and are now level on points with Birmingham and Huddersfield. They deserve huge credit for getting out there. And now they've got to make it count away at a Middlesbrough side who have been pretty profligate in front of goal, who have not often won those home games that they're expected to against the bottom half teams. Sheffield Wednesday will be a threat on the counter. I can see it being a fairly low scoring game. And actually, I'm going to go for the same as both sides had on Friday. I'm going to go to Championship's favourite scoreline of 1 goal apiece. As we move on to a game that I'm a little bit torn about, which is down at home park, is Plymouth Argyle versus Bristol City. Bristol City doing what they do, being inconsistent, being brilliant at home to Leicester, a very strong performance against one of the top sides in the league. That following a poor defeat at West Brom. They've had some shockers against Cardiff and Sheffield Wednesday, but they beat Swansea at home in a poor game as well. They are the hardest team to predict for a reason. And this is a game where you'd probably think, yeah, they can get a win here, which means they inevitably won't. Plymouth did take the lead against Norwich. They did have some great opportunities in that game. And on another day, probably could have scored 2, 3 or 4. I think they had 3 clear-cut chances officially. But defensively, a few of those old frailties were showing again. And they've just lost their goal threat, unfortunately, under their new manager. Yes, they've been a little bit tighter at the back, but they're not taking chances. And Morgan Whittaker aside, they don't really look like scoring. That does make this difficult, though, because Bristol City, away from home recently, have let in goals. Yes, against top sides, but still, West Brom, Ipswich and the Sheffield Wednesday game, 7 goals in those 3. Plymouth at home have struggled recently, but they've been playing pretty much exclusively top half sides. They've come up against Preston, they've come up against Ipswich, they had Leeds not long before that. I think they might score in this one. I think this is going to be a bit of a surprise thriller. Plymouth are in the battle, Bristol City have got nothing really to play for. I'm going to go for a bit of an end-to-end game and just a bit of a hunch. I've got no real idea what to go for here. It's that stage, it's silly season in the Championship, so I'm going to go for a thrilling 2-2 draw on Easter Monday. Let's move on to the side that are marooned at the bottom of the table. It is Rotherham United versus Millwall. Millwall got another good point, this time at home to West Brom. Took a rare opportunity with Duncan Watmore, but it was a very poor game. Let's be honest, a couple of shots on target each. West Brom from a penalty, Millwall from a mistake. There wasn't a great deal of quality or either side opening teams up. But Millwall, you've got to give credit to Neil Harris. He's made them defensively resolute. He's dragged them away from the battle at the bottom. And given some of the fixtures they've had in that run as well, he deserves big credit for it. Rotherham are shipping goals for fun. They've been absolutely useless. They've not scored in their last 5. 3-0 away at Preston. Yes, they got that draw at home to Huddersfield. But they're weak from set pieces. They're weak defensively from wide areas. I think Millwall win comfortably. I think they'll take advantage via the old school Millwall way. I'm going to go for Millwall to win by 2-0 away at Rotherham United. That will probably pretty much secure their safety. As we move into the second half of the Easter Monday fixtures, and we start with a 3 p.m. TV game. It is a big one at the bottom between Stoke City and Huddersfield Town. But has the board's patience with Steven Schumacher paid dividends, because Stoke go above his former club Plymouth and up into 17th place with a 2-0 win away at Hull City, where they played really solidly. A great goal from Lauren, obviously a second one in extra time. But it's not just that, it's the fact they restricted Hull to no shots on target. They had a good shape, they managed to make them go from distance, try and produce individual magic. They had a really good discipline to them, which Stoke at times this season have been all over the shop defensively. If you add to that they had a genuine threat on the break, they created chances from set pieces. I just thought it was a really good away performance, and you could say that in that game. They also played pretty well in their previous away game as well at Preston. And against two of the sides chasing the playoffs, to pick up those results and pull away from the relegation zone. I said it in a lot of games early on when Schumacher wasn't getting results. They were playing pretty well. And I feel given the summer to bring in some of his own players, some players that may be a bit more ruthless and more solid defensively as well. I think Stoke could have a good season next year under Schumacher. I know that often doesn't end up being true. But I'm glad they stuck with him. Some of the fans who wanted him out early, it was just silly, but they're getting their rewards now. The problem is, bar the Middlesbrough game, they have struggled at home a little bit more. However, Huddersfield have not won in their last 5. They didn't get a win away at Rotherham, which is basically the championship banker at the minute. They couldn't score at Cardiff either. And while they won at Watford were dismal at the time. And it wasn't that convincing a win either. This is such a hard one to call. Just when you think, again, a bit like Bristol City, when you think Stoke have turned a corner, it goes wrong. But with them now away from the danger by 5 points, I hope the fans will get behind Schumacher and give him a chance. And I feel if they do, they will get rewarded for that. Huddersfield will press high. Stoke have got a real counter-attacking threat. And at their best, they can create plenty of chances, as we've seen already in Schumacher's reign. Whether or not they take those chances is anyone's guess. I'm going to say they'll take a couple though, and go for Stoke City to win by 2-1 against Huddersfield. On to two teams that were in dismal form, but one side ended that form on Friday afternoon. It is Sunderland versus Blackburn Rovers. Sunderland finally won a game, a 2-0 win at Cardiff, 2 good early goals, a really strong performance. Joe Bellingham amongst the goals again, an early penalty too. It was a really exemplary away display and much more the shades of what we saw last season away from home under Tony Mowbray. Really impressive, a really good performance, and defensively really resolute as well. So a massive plus for them, and any worries about getting dragged into danger pretty much gone now. So they'll be focusing on the end of the season, getting a new manager in. But they've got nothing to play for, which now makes this quite dangerous, because Blackburn, a narrow defeat at home to Ipswich. We mentioned they've been far more solid under John Eustace. But defensively, they've been better. Going forward, they've lost virtually all of their threat. They've only scored 4 goals in their last 6 games, 2 blanks in a row now. And this game, it just has to be low scoring, doesn't it? We know John Eustace will set up for a draw away from home. We know they're going to go and be defensive, backs to the wall. Can Sunderland break it down? The reason I'm going to say they might is because they've got players like Bellingham who can produce a moment of magic from distance. And I feel like it will take that, a long-range strike or a set piece. I'm going to go for that to be the difference. So while Sunderland might give up a chance or two on the break, I'm going to go for them to win at home to Blackburn by 1-0. Continuing my theme of a low-scoring Easter weekend, we move on to Swansea City versus QPR. And let's just take a moment here. A once-in-a-career moment for Jimmy Dunn. Turns it onto his left foot, pings it in the top corner in the 92nd minute. and takes QPR as close to safety as they've been all season. 4 points clear of the relegation zone with 7 games to go. The 2 centre-halves popping up with the goals after falling behind. You've got to be fair. They've been so much better under Martí Cifuentes. A very similar pattern to Sheffield Wednesday, to be fair. Albeit Wednesday were a bit further behind. They were the better team just about. They did create chances. They were trying to be a bit more progressive. And in the end, they got their just rewards through a moment of sublime magic, which will probably not happen again in his entire career. But against a Swansea side who did them a favour by getting a draw away at Sheffield Wednesday from 1 behind, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because Swansea like to keep possession themselves. They do give up a couple of silly chances per match though. And it's going to be whether QPR can be clinical from open play. Something we've not seen a lot this season. It was 2 blanks in a row before the Birmingham game. Against West Brom, to be fair, they were good and denied by a wonderful handball. But no strikers scoring since the Leicester game. That's going to make it a little bit difficult. 4 in a row, relying on Sam Field and centre-halves. Are they going to be able to get the result? They've been okay defensively at times, but on the road, they've actually done better against the top sides at times. The Leicester win, the Sunderland draw. Away at Swansea, it could be a little bit difficult. Swansea have liked a 1-1 draw this season, which is making me think that maybe that's the score to go for. But again, the last 2 home games, win against Cardiff in a derby, win against Blackburn. I'm going to trust the home form to prevail. Just as people think QPR are away now, I think they might get sucked back in. I'm going to go for Swansea City to win this just by 2-1. The last of the 3 PM kickoffs is a big one in the playoff race for West Bromwich Albion, who host Watford. I do want to start by saying Watford in their 2-2 draw with Leeds is the best I've seen them look for a long time. Yes, Leeds came back into it twice from behind, but Watford were front-footed. They created a lot of chances. Yes, part of that may have been pressure on Leeds, but Tom Cleverley has produced a win away at Birmingham the ugly way and a really solid and aggressive home performance. Not sure about the attendance figure they listed though, looking at the side of that pitch. However, I will say it was a really strong effort. Defensively, probably not happy with the goals they conceded. I mean, the second one's a little unfortunate, but you've got to get it clear. But overall, more promising signs for them. For West Brom, they're just so rock solid at home. A 1-1 draw at Millwall, it was a poor game, but it's generally how West Brom play. They play and they nick draws away from home and they win their home matches. They won 2-0 against Bristol City, 2-1 at home to Coventry. And I think they win at home again. I think it will be a really comfortable day. I'm not sure Watford will create as much away from home. We saw against Birmingham, they weren't really that aggressive. And to be fair, considering Emmanuel Dennis went off injured and he was the key threat against Leeds on Friday night, I do think that game will come a bit soon for him. So based on that, I don't think Watford will score. I think West Brom will be disciplined and they'll get a comfortable win. I'm going to go for 2-0, as I quite often do for West Brom at home, and it often delivers me perfect scores. So hopefully it will again this time. Now we move on to the big one, don't we? It is first v fourth, and it is probably a must not lose for the away side with 2 games in hand. Southampton begin their run as they face all of the top 3 in their run-in. They go to Ipswich Town, who at Portman Road will be bouncing because they won their last home game 6-0 and they were the only one of the top 4 to win on Friday, which puts them top of the table after coming up from League One in second. It's a remarkable feat. Yes, it wasn't one of their vintage displays. It's more like what we saw earlier in the season from them. Very good at home, very aggressive. Away from home, get the job done, be solid, be disciplined. Didn't give up any great chances. Didn't create a huge amount themselves, but got the early goal. Were incredibly professional. And you know what? That's going to stand them in good stead if they can go up, because Kieran McKenna's done a great job. They defended set pieces well. And going towards a possible promotion here, it's an incredible effort. From a neutral point of view, it would be amazing to see them go up, but there's a lot of work to be done because Southampton are a very good side. We know the quality they've got. The goals galore ended after the last 2 games though. A 1-1 draw against the disciplined Middlesbrough side. But that's where I'm a bit concerned about this game, because Ipswich are going to come out and play at home. They don't play defensively. They don't play disciplined at home. If Ipswich came and set up like an away game here, I actually think they'd win it pretty comfortably. But they just don't do that. The crowd spurs them on. They'll be aggressive. They'll press. And it's whether Southampton can beat that or whether they get caught at the back. I actually think we're going to see a mix of both during the game. I think this is going to be the best game of the day. I really hope it doesn't get dragged into one of those sort of cagey discipline ones. The worst thing, arguably, from a neutral point of view, would be Ipswich going 1 up and then Southampton just trying to keep the ball and Ipswich letting them have it in their own half and keeping a shape. But I think we're going to get goals. I think we're going to see a mix of mistakes at the back when Southampton are pressed. We're going to see Ipswich being aggressive and being beaten in the press at times. And I think that's going to lead to a thrill up with plenty of goals. I'm finally predicting someone to score 3, and that team is Ipswich Town. I'm going for them to stay top with a 3-2 win at home to Southampton on Monday night. But what a game that is going to be for the Championship. And then after all of that, the same again, the 8 p.m. game will be Leeds United. They host Hull City, who themselves are falling away from that playoff battle. A 2-0 defeat at home to Stoke. No shot on target. Really struggling to break down teams who are disciplined like that. Their visitors sitting behind the ball, forcing them to go from distance to try and go for moments of magic, and it didn't really come off. Set pieces weren't really as effective as you would expect them to be at times, but Stoke defended them well. You've got to give them credit too. Whereas for Leeds United, I'll be honest with you, a bit like Leicester at lunchtime, they were pretty dismal. The really poor performance. First half, if Watford had been more ruthless with their final pass, they could have been in a lot more trouble than they were. Somerville obviously saved the day for a moment, and Matteo Joseph didn't know much about it. He was in the right position, which allowed him to score an equaliser instantly after coming on. And then he did have 1 or 2 chances to nick it in the end. But a really disappointing display. I'm still sticking with Leeds to win the league, but this game could be difficult because Hull are going to do to Leeds what Stoke tried to do to Hull. And if they do it well, Leeds are going to find it hard to break them down. We've seen that a few times this season where teams have sat behind the ball at Ellen Road. They have found it difficult to get in behind using the pace of Somerville. We saw it in the second half against Watford when Watford sat back on their lead. It was difficult for Leeds to create really clear-cut chances. And as a result, I don't think this is going to be a thrilling game again. We've seen their home wins recently, 2-0 against Millwall with a second coming late on, 1-0 at home to Stoke. There've been a lot of efficient performances rather than really spectacular ones. I'm going for the same again, 1-0 to Leeds United to finish. If those results come off, well, Ipswich and Leeds are going to be very happy at the end of Monday night. So with that in mind, let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted. And yes, in the 2 evening games, I've gone for the top 2 to nick narrow victories at home. And at the same time, I've gone for Southampton to obviously lose and Leicester to drop yet more points. Will I be right or not? We'll wait and see. In the battle for the playoffs, a point for Norwich, but 3 for Coventry will tighten the gap between 6th and 7th. I've also got Preston to win to keep it tight as well. And at the bottom, with my prediction of Huddersfield losing and Birmingham City as well, it could be a great day for Sheffield Wednesday, who, if my predictions are right, will be out of the relegation zone come Monday night. But do you agree or disagree with my predictions? They're just my ones for Matchday 40. Let me know and give me your predictions for all of Easter Monday's action. If you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in a recap at the start of the next episode, which will be on Wednesday afternoon. I hope you're looking forward to that and all the exciting action on Monday. Fingers crossed your team have a good afternoon. But for now, if you did enjoy this one, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular prediction shows from the Honest Football Podcast as the end of the season is near. There's going to be plenty of entertainment on the way. Hopefully you're looking forward to all of that, as we will next return on Monday with our preview of Arsenal v Luton and all of the Premier League predictions for midweek. Thank you very much for being here as always and taking part in your numbers in the comments. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you back here on Wednesday as we look ahead to Matchday 41.